So I had a messed up eye. It's this one here, right? And this is a fake eyepiece. It comes out, but I'm not going to do that before you ask. They did a pretty good job. It looks pretty good. It looks almost identical.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
anyway, so I have one good eye. And people would say, you got to stop fighting, Michael. I remember one doctor saying, okay, you're cleared for the medical, but by the way, the clearance, the benchmark you have to pass is 2200 vision, which is still clinically blind. And I don't know if I was technically passing that either, but whatever, that's another story. But they said, you got to be careful because you've only got one good eye. And if anything ever happened to that good eye, Michael, you'll be blind. And I was like, well, lightning's not going to strike twice. Look at how many fighters we have on the UFC roster all around the world getting a detached retina due to trauma. You don't hear about it too often. So I thought, lightning's not going to strike twice. Anyway, I fight George St-Pierre. I lose that fight. He knew I was blind in one eye. He targeted it. Then I fly out to Shanghai, pardon me. A couple of weeks later, I fight Kelvin Gastelum. I get cracked off him with a good one, and that was that. And then we go to an after party afterwards, and I'm sitting there in this club, and every time I looked this way, I get a flash of light. I'm like, what was that? So I looked again, another flash of light. And every time I looked to the left, I would get a flash of light, and I started panicking because I'm thinking, holy shit, I don't believe this. I've got a detached retina in my good eye. And I started getting emotional. In a nightclub, I'd had a couple of drinks, but I'm like, fuck, I'm thinking I'm going to go blind. Because even if they could have fixed the eye, it's going to be a few weeks while the surgery repairs. So I'm going to be blind at least for a little bit. And that's a terrifying thought to have, to actually go blind. So I left this nightclub because I didn't want to be sitting there and bloody tears rolling down my face and people thinking, oh, look at this soft cunt. He's crying because he lost a fight. I'm like, no, I think I'm going to go blind.
Yeah.
So I leave the club and I go back to my hotel. And a few of my mates came back, and a little while after came to see me and whatnot, see if I was okay. Anyway, we have a good drink, a very, very good drink. So by the time I've sobered up, I've forgotten all about my eye at this point. I got to go to the airport. I fall asleep on the plane. It's a long flight back to LA, and I wake up halfway through, and I look to my left, and then there's that flash of light. Holy shit, I've forgotten all about that. So when I land, I call my eye doctor straight away. Sorry if this is taking a while.
No.
I call my eye doctor straight away, and he's like, yeah, you need to see someone. So I go in there, and whenever I'm uncomfortable, I always use humor as kind of like a mask. And I went in and I see this doctor, and I said, listen, doc, I think I've got a detached retina in my good eye. He's all right, well, let's take a look. He says, we're going to put some drops in. You're not going to be able to see for a while. And I make a joke. I say, oh, well, I guess I better get used to this view. Hey. and he says, oh, well, calm down. We're not there just yet. And I was like, we're not fucking there just yet. Jesus Christ. I was kidding. And anyway, it turns out I had a vitreous detachment. So from your iris, which is the colored part here, to the retina at the back, there's fluid called vitreous fluid and millions of fibers which attach to the retina at the back of the eye. And in your 60s or 70s, due to old age, that would just kind of separate from the retina nice and smoothly. But due to trauma, it can detach or partially detach. And I had a partially detached retina. And every time I would see, partially detached vitreous, pardon me. And every time I would see that flash, that's another fiber pulling from the retina. And so you've got to be careful because every time that pulls, it can cause the retina to tear. So anyway, I was like, okay, well, that's it. The game's up. It's time to retire. I don't want to go blind.
And you don't lie about the fact that you read medical journals, Mike, because I feel like we're talking to an optometrist right now. A very good description of what was going on.
I know nothing about eyes, but after the amount of eye operations and meetings and stuff I've been through with eye doctors, yeah, I know a little bit. And I'm probably, listen, don't repeat any of that. I just butchered that majorly. Anybody that's studying any kind of optometry right now is probably shaking their head hearing this interview because I've definitely got that wrong, but I feel that I'm at least, I would say 85% right.
Well, we'll give you a license from what we can see. But let's just quickly, just on that, you mentioned fighting GSP and then going over there and fighting Kelvin Gastelum. A lot of people talking about that part of your career. Looking back on it, and especially when you're writing the book, do you have any regrets on how you sort of finished out those last couple of fights? The Kelvin Gastelum fight obviously was a tough one for you. If you could replay it in another way, would you have done it differently?
Yeah, well, see, the thing was, as I said before, I always knew I was on borrowed time, right? And my goal when I got into fighting was always to take care of my family. Give them the life that I never had. I left school at 16. It's not an unusual story. It's a very common story. Left school at 16, no qualifications, no job, dead end job. Then one after the other. I've done every shitty job under the sun. And in my mid-20s, I got to a point where I was like, man, I am over this. There's got to be more to life. And then I discovered, mixed martial arts, and I did it all for a monetary reason. I did it to give my family a good life. Now I won the belt. Obviously, that comes with some extra cash, and then I had a big fight against George St-Pierre. When I fought George St-Pierre, just getting that license to fight in New York, that was very, very hard. I won't go into details, but they made me jump through so many hurdles. I'd sign disclaimers, get letters of doctors, second opinions, all kinds of stuff. And on the last week of training, just again, a sparring partner picked me up and dumped me. He went for a takedown like his life depended on it, and he landed on me and tore all the cartilage in my ribs, and I couldn't hardly move. And this was a huge fight. George St-Pierre is a massive draw. This was going to be a massive, massive payday. Now, if my eye condition wasn't like it was, I probably would have withdrawn from the fight and said, all right, we'll do it another time. But, I had to do it. So whatever, I had a shitty performance, and fair play to George, he beat me. And then from there, I knew I was almost done. But then Anderson Silva failed his steroid test, and Kelvin Gastelum needed another opponent. I was overtrained for the GSP, and I was like, you know what, screw it, whatever. It is what it is. I'll fly out there and get another payday. So I went out there, and, listen, money's one thing and legacy's another. You can't buy a legacy. So I do regret doing that Kelvin Gastelum fight, because I had no business doing that. I was overtrained. In fact, I didn't train for that fight whatsoever. I was overtrained for the GSP one. Then I went on the piss for a couple of weeks and then flew out to China with my mates. You know what I mean? He was training for the biggest fight of his life. I'd already been choked out a couple of weeks ago. So, the conditions weren't right, but there was a lot of money on the table, and I was like, well, I knew I was almost done. And for me, that's why I got into this, so I got into it to give, my family a better life. And as I say, I won't go into the actual number, but it was a big number. It was a huge number. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll go and collect that, and I'll fly out to China. So
China was safe back then.
I don't safe. I don't know. Is China ever safe? They're eating dogs, they're eating bats, they're eating snakes.
You guys didn't go to any wet markets, did you, after the fight?
What? Wet markers? What's a wet marker?
Oh, that's where apparently the coronavirus originated, in one of the wet markets. Yeah.
Oh, wet market. Sorry, part of it. Yeah, I'm not sure. No. I flew to China, got knocked out, got pissed, and flew home.